My own daughter pushed us off a cliff. The words echo in my head like a curse I can't wake up from. One second I was holding my husband's hand, feeling the mountain breeze, and the next I was falling into nothing but betrayal. The world spun, my bones cracked, and all I could think was how love can turn into a weapon sharper than any knife. People say parents would die for their children, but what happens when your child wants you dead? If you've ever believed that family means unconditional love, this story will challenge everything you know. Stay with me, because sometimes the people we raise are the ones who destroy us. And if this story touches something deep inside you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to hear more true family drama stories like this one. My name is Helen Carter, and I used to believe I had the perfect life. I was a high school literature teacher in a small town in Oregon. My husband, David, was a carpenter who built furniture so beautiful that strangers stopped just to watch him work. We had 2 children, Michael and Emily, and for years, our mornings smelled of fresh coffee and sawdust, the kind of scent that makes you think happiness can last forever. But it didn't. 20 years ago, our son Michael died in what the police called an accident. We buried him under an Oregon sky, believing we'd lost him to fate. What we didn't know was that fate had nothing to do with it. It was our daughter's hands that took his life. And now, decades later, she's come back to finish what she started. They say every family hides a story they never want the world to know. For a long time, I believed we were the exception. I believed in Sunday pancakes, laughter echoing through our kitchen, and the quiet certainty that love could hold us together forever. My name is Helen Carter, and for 35 years I lived in what I thought was a perfect world. Our mornings always began the same way. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air before sunrise, drifting through the hallways of our house in northern Oregon. My husband David would already be in the workshop, sanding a new piece of oak, the rhythmic sound of his tools like a heartbeat for our home. Sometimes I would watch him from the window, his silhouette framed by the early light, and feel grateful for the simple life we had built together. I taught English at the local high school, a quiet place surrounded by pine trees and fog. I loved my students, their endless curiosity, and the way literature gave them a voice when life felt too heavy. David's work was his language. The furniture he made carried his soul, carved into every curve of wood. Together, we built something that looked unbreakable. Our children were the center of it all. Michael, our oldest, was everything a mother could dream of. He was tall, bright, and full of kindness. He could light up a room just by walking into it. He loved to sketch buildings, saying one day he would design homes for people who have lost theirs. That was Michael, always thinking of others, always building dreams out of nothing. Then there was Emily, 5 years younger than her brother, quiet, observant, and hard to read even as a child. Where Michael's laughter filled every space, Emily's silence seemed to swallow it. She preferred to sit by the window and draw alone, or read the same book over and over. I used to think she was simply shy, that her stillness was her way of understanding the world. But sometimes, when I caught her watching us, there was something in her eyes I could not name. It wasn't anger exactly, or sadness. It was something sharper, colder, a calculation that didn't belong to a child. Still, we loved her with everything we had. Family dinners were sacred to me. No matter how busy we were, every Sunday we sat together at the long oak table David had built with his own hands. Michael would talk about his architecture projects, his friends, his plans for college. Emily would pick at her food and smile faintly when David teased her about boys. I remember thinking, this is what happiness looks like. Sometimes, on warm evenings, we walked along the coast in Cannon Beach. The ocean breeze tangled my hair as David held my hand. We would talk about the future, about the trips we'd take once the kids had their own lives. He wanted to drive across the country. I wanted to see Paris. We promised each other that retirement would be our grand adventure. Looking back now, I realize how blind we were. Happiness has a way of disguising the cracks forming underneath. You don't notice the small silences, the glances that last a second too long, the tension that hides behind polite smiles. You tell yourself it's nothing, that families argue, that children change as they grow. The truth is, I missed every warning sign. The first one came one rainy afternoon when Michael and Emily were teenagers. I was grading essays in the living room when I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were sharp, raw in a way I had never heard before. "You always think you're better than me," Emily snapped. "That's not true," Michael said quietly. "I just want to help. You're everyone's favorite, Moms, dads, even the neighbors talk about you like you're perfect. Em, that's not what this is about, he tried to say, but she cut him off. Just stop pretending you care. You don't. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm outside. When I entered the kitchen, Emily's face was red, her hands trembling. Michael looked guilty, as if he had done something wrong simply by existing. I brushed it off as sibling rivalry, the kind that passes with age, but it didn't. As the years went on, Emily's distance grew. She rarely smiled in photos. She stopped bringing friends home. Whenever Michael achieved something, she retreated further into herself. I tried to reach her, to talk, but she would always say, "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." Still, there were moments when I thought things were getting better, like the Christmas before Michael's last year of college. We sat by the fireplace, opening gifts. Emily had made him a small leather journal. On the first page, she had written, "For your big ideas." Michael hugged her, and for the first time in years, she smiled. I thought maybe we were healing, but even then, something about that smile felt off, like it didn't reach her eyes. David never saw it. He believed in the goodness of people, especially in our children. He used to say, "Em's just different. She feels things deeply, but she'll find her way." I wanted to believe that too. When Michael graduated, he got a job with an architecture firm in California. We threw a small party in the backyard, full of laughter and stories. Emily stood beside me, quiet as always, watching him as he hugged his friends goodbye. Later that night, after everyone had left, I found her sitting alone by the fire pit. The light from the flames flickered across her face. "You'll miss your brother," I said softly. She didn't look at me. "Maybe. Emily, he loves you. You know that, right?" She turned her head slowly, her eyes unreadable. "Sure, Mom. Everyone loves Michael." The way she said it left a chill in my chest that I couldn't explain. A few months later, everything changed. Michael came home for a visit that September. It was supposed to be just a weekend, a short trip to see us before his next project began. The weather was perfect, golden leaves falling across the yard. I made his favorite dinner. Emily joined us, quiet but polite. I remember how she leaned closer when he talked about his work, how her smile seemed rehearsed. That night, he told us he planned to move back to Oregon permanently after the next year. "I want to help you two when you retire," he said. "You've done enough for me. It's my turn." David's eyes welled up with pride. Mine too. But when I glanced at Emily, her fork froze midair. She said nothing. I should have known that moment was the beginning of the end. 2 nights later, Michael went out with some old friends. He promised he'd be back by midnight. I waited up, like mothers do, half asleep on the couch with the porch light on, but he never came home. The police called the next morning. They said his car had been found near a cliff in Northern California. He must have slipped while taking photos by the edge. "An accident," they said. I remember the sound of David's cry, deep and broken, like something had been ripped out of him. I remember collapsing to the floor, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even dial my sister Linda's number. I remember Emily standing in the corner, arms crossed, her face pale but dry. At the funeral, I wore the same black dress I had worn to my mother's burial. The church smelled of lilies and rain. David held me as I sobbed, while Emily stood quietly, her eyes fixed on the coffin. She never cried, not once. At the time, I told myself that was her way of coping, that grief makes people act differently, but deep down, something in me whispered that there was more, something I wasn't ready to see. Now, after all these years, I realized that was the day I buried not only my son, but also the truth. Because while I stood there saying goodbye to Michael, my daughter was already hiding a secret that would destroy everything we had ever built. And soon, that secret would come for us too. For almost 20 years after Michael's death, I learned to live with silence. I convinced myself that grief fades, that people change, that families heal. But peace has a strange way of breaking when you least expect it. Ours began to crumble the moment Emily and her husband Mark walked through our front door one Sunday morning with coffee and smiles that felt rehearsed. "Mom, Dad," Emily said, setting her purse down neatly on the table. "You've been talking about getting your will updated, right? Mark and I found a great attorney in Denver. Maybe it's time." Her tone was gentle, too gentle. I remember glancing at David, who smiled, unaware of the storm that had just begun. We hadn't discussed our will in years. We had a modest life, a comfortable home, and some savings. Enough to pass on, not enough to make anyone greedy, or so I thought. But Emily's insistence grew stronger by the day. When we finally visited the lawyer, she sat close beside Mark, her hand resting lightly on his knee, her eyes fixed on us with that same quiet control I had seen in her since childhood. "Mom," she said sweetly, "it would make sense if Mark and I were the main heirs. We can manage everything when you two get older. It's only fair." Her voice was sugar over poison. David nodded thoughtfully, his trust as deep as ever, but my stomach twisted. There was something in her eyes that didn't belong there, something cold and calculating. That night, after signing the documents, Mark hugged me tightly. "Now we're one big family forever," he whispered. His breath was warm against my ear, but the words made my skin crawl. I lay awake for hours, listening to David's breathing beside me, replaying every smile, every word, every subtle glance Emily had given that day. Somewhere inside me, a mother's instinct screamed that something terrible was waiting. Over the next few weeks, their visits became constant. At first, it was comforting to have them around, helping with groceries, cleaning, bringing the grandkids, but slowly, their presence began to feel like surveillance. Emily would walk through the house as if she were taking inventory. "Mom," she said one afternoon, "this place is too big for you and Dad. What if you fall down the stairs? You should sell it while the market's still high." Mark chimed in. "We could find you a small apartment in Denver, closer to us." I forced a smile. "This is our home, Emily. Every piece of furniture in here has a story. Your father built most of it." She tilted her head, studying me with that patient, almost pitying look. "You're being sentimental, Mom. Sometimes you have to let go." Let go. The phrase lingered in my chest like smoke. That night, I asked David if he didn't find it strange that Emily was suddenly so concerned about our finances. He shrugged. "She just wants to help, Helen. She's always been practical." But his eyes betrayed him. There was a flicker of unease he couldn't hide. Then came the request that changed everything. Emily wanted power of attorney control over our financial decisions, just in case something happened. She said it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I couldn't sleep after that. I called my sister Linda the next morning. She listened quietly, then said, "Helen, think about it. Emily doesn't need your money. So why is she trying to control it?" Her question sat heavy on my chest all day. That evening, when Emily visited again, I decided to ask her directly. We sat on the porch, the sky painted with the last light of the day. "Emily," I began softly, "why are you so interested in our finances? Your father and I can handle things ourselves." She smiled too quickly. "It's not about control, Mom. It's about love, about responsibility. Families look out for each other." But the way she said responsibility sounded more like threat than affection. Mark joined us, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Helen, you and David have done enough worrying in your life. Let us take care of things. We just want what's best for you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe both of them. But every instinct inside me said that love doesn't sound like ownership. That night, after they left, David and I had our first real argument in years. I accused him of being too trusting, of not seeing what was right in front of us. He said I was imagining things, that grief had made me paranoid. "Do you remember what Emily was like before Michael died?" I asked him quietly. "She was different, distant, cold." He stopped, dish towel still in his hand, and looked at me. There was something haunted in his eyes. "Helen," he said slowly, "there's something I never told you about that night." I froze. "What do you mean?" He sat down heavily, his shoulders sagging as if under 20 years of weight. "Emily wasn't in her room that night. I saw her leave the house around 8. I followed her. She went to the cliffs. I felt my heart stop. She met Michael there," David continued. "They were fighting. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard her scream that he always got everything, that it wasn't fair. Then I saw her push him. The world fell away beneath me. I could barely breathe. I thought it was an accident," he whispered. "She said he slipped, trying to catch her. I believed her. She begged me not to tell you. I thought I was protecting you." I stared at him, the man I had shared my whole life with, and realized he had been keeping a secret that had already buried our son once. My daughter killed my son. My husband hid it. And now, she wanted our lives too. I walked to the window, staring at the reflection of our family photos on the wall. Michael's smile stared back at me. That was when the call came. Emily's voice was warm, cheerful. "Mom, Dad, we were thinking how about we celebrate your 35th anniversary with a family trip? There's this beautiful lookout in the Rockies. The view is incredible. You'll love it." Her words made my blood run cold. The Rockies, the cliffs. History was repeating itself. I forced my voice to stay calm. "That's sweet, honey. Let us think about it." When I hung up, David and I exchanged a look of pure terror. She wasn't just taking our money, she was planning to take our lives. And that's when I realized something even worse. If I had listened to my instincts 20 years ago, maybe Michael would still be alive. What would you do if the person you love most turned out to be your biggest threat? Would you protect them, or would you protect yourself? If you've ever faced a choice that tore your heart in half, tell me in the comments where you're from and how you would handle it. And if this story keeps you wondering what happens next, like the video and subscribe. The truth that follows is darker than you can imagine. The week after that phone call felt like living inside a nightmare that refused to end. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every creak of the old wooden house made my heart race. David tried to keep calm, pretending we could somehow handle this like it was just another family problem, but we both knew better. We were living under the shadow of our daughter's plan. Emily and Mark visited the following weekend, all smiles as if nothing had happened. She brought a pie, homemade, the same kind I used to make when she was little. The sweetness of cinnamon and apples filled the kitchen, but it only made me sick. "Mom," Emily said as she set the pie down, "Mark and I were thinking, the anniversary trip could be this coming weekend. The weather's perfect for hiking. It'll be beautiful up there in the Rockies." I forced a smile. "That's soon, isn't it?" "Sticking. Spontaneous is good," Mark said, his grin wide, his voice too cheerful. "You two need some excitement. You've been cooped up here for too long." David looked at me across the table. His eyes said what we both knew. This wasn't an invitation, it was a deadline. That night, when we were finally alone, we sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from the fireplace. David broke the silence first. "We can't refuse, Helen. If we say no, she'll find another way." I nodded, my hands trembling. "Then we go, but we need to be ready." He looked at me, surprised by my calm. "What do you mean?" "We'll bring your phone. You can record everything. If we don't make it out, at least someone will know the truth." For a long moment, he said nothing, then took my hand. "Okay," he whispered. "We'll be ready." The days leading up to the trip felt unreal. Emily called constantly, her voice warm and full of excitement. "You'll love it, Mom. The lookout has the best view in Colorado." Every time she said lookout, I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Friday night came too soon. Emily and Mark arrived early in the morning, their SUV spotless, the trunk packed with hiking gear. Mark wore a brand new jacket, the tag still on it. Emily's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ready for your big adventure?" she chirped. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and demand to know how she could smile after killing her brother. But instead, I smiled back. "Of course, honey. Let's make it a trip to remember." As we pulled out of the driveway, David squeezed my hand. I knew what he was thinking. This might be the last time we ever saw our home again. The drive to the mountains took nearly 3 hours. Emily played upbeat music, humming softly as if we were heading to a picnic. Mark kept up the act, talking about how great it would be to spend time away from everything. I stared out the window, memorizing the road signs, the turns, every landmark. If something happened to us, I wanted someone to be able to find where we'd gone. When we reached the trailhead, the air was crisp and cold. Pines towered over us, and the sound of a distant waterfall echoed through the valley. It would have been beautiful if it weren't for the dread pressing against my ribs. Mark opened the trunk, handing us water bottles and sandwiches. "All set," he said cheerfully. "It's a short hike, only about an hour to the lookout." David slipped his phone into his jacket pocket, turning on the recorder. I saw the small red light blink once before disappearing under the fabric. The trail started gently enough, winding through the forest with patches of sunlight breaking through the trees. Emily walked behind us, Mark ahead, always looking back with that same too-perfect smile. "Doing okay back there, Mom?" Emily called out. "Just fine," I replied, though my legs were shaking. After about 40 minutes, the trail narrowed. The ground turned rocky, and the air grew thin. My breath came short and uneven, but I pushed forward. I couldn't show weakness. Not now. Then Mark pointed to a side path. Let's go up there, he said. The view is even better from that spot. It wasn't on the map I had seen earlier. The path was steeper, the rocks loose. David frowned. Are you sure that's safe? Don't worry, Emily said. We hiked it before. It's fine. Her voice was light, but I could see the flicker of impatience behind her smile. As we climbed, I tried to focus on the sound of the wind, the crunch of gravel beneath our boots. My heart pounded in my ears. I looked at David, who gave me a small nod. He was still recording. When we reached the top, the world opened around us. The valley stretched below, endless and breathtaking. The sun glinted off the river, winding through the trees. Isn't it amazing? Mark said, setting down his backpack. Yes, I whispered. It's beautiful. He smiled. Let's take some pictures. You two stand close to the edge. I'll get the best angle. The word edge sent ice through my veins. I moved slowly, pretending to adjust my jacket. David stood beside me, his hand brushing mine. Emily moved behind us. A little closer, Mom. Just one step back. I turned slightly, my eyes meeting hers. For a second, I saw something flicker in her face, something almost human. Then it was gone. I took a deep breath. How about we take one with the four of us? I said. It'll be a great memory. She blinked, thrown off balance. Sure, Mom. Mark joined her. The camera clicked once, twice. David whispered under his breath, It's recording. Then, out of nowhere, Mark said, Wait, let me fix the frame, and stepped forward. His smile twisted. Now, Emily lunged. David reacted first. He grabbed her wrist, shouting, If we die, you're coming with us. The ground shifted beneath our feet. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then we all went over the edge. The air tore past me. I remember the scream, mine, David's, maybe hers, all blending into one terrible sound. The rocks rushed up like teeth. Pain exploded through my body. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on cold stone, my head pounding, my body broken but alive. I could hear David's voice, weak but steady. Helen, don't move. Pretend you're dead. And above us, faintly, came the voices of Emily and Mark, whispering to each other. They're gone, Emily said. Both of them. It worked. Her voice, calm and certain, was the last thing I heard before the darkness took me again. Pain brought me back to life. It came in waves, sharp and deep, rolling through my body like lightning trapped beneath my skin. My head throbbed. My vision was a blur of gray rock and blood. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then I heard it, the faint rustle of movement above me. Voices. They're dead, Emily said, her tone calm, almost satisfied. Both of them. Are you sure? Mark's voice shook. What if... They're not breathing, she snapped. Stop worrying. It's over. I forced my body to stay still, my breath shallow. Every muscle screamed, but I remembered David's voice right before the darkness took me. Don't move. Pretend you're dead. So I did. Through the ringing in my ears, I could hear them talking. God, Mark groaned. My leg's broken. I can't even stand. Then crawl, Emily said coldly. We have to make it look real. When we call for help, we'll tell them it was an accident. That Dad slipped and took us down with him. Her words cut through me more sharply than the pain. My daughter was rehearsing my death. I turned my head slightly. David was lying a few feet away, his body twisted, his face covered in blood and dirt. But then I saw his hand move barely. Relief and terror hit me at once. He was alive. Minutes passed like hours. The sun was starting to fade, throwing long shadows across the ravine. I listened to Emily and Mark dragging themselves across the ground, their moans and whispers echoing through the rocks. Then their voices grew faint. They're leaving, David whispered, his voice raw. I blinked tears and dirt from my eyes. You're alive, I mouthed. Barely, he said. We have to wait until they're gone. The phone, it's still recording. Ended of Wadi Anyone. I could hear it faintly buzzing in his jacket pocket. The red light was still blinking. Every second it recorded could mean the difference between justice and death. The sky darkened. The cold settled in quickly, seeping into my bones. I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion kept pulling me under. When I woke again, it was night. The moon was full, lighting the canyon in silver. I could hear water trickling somewhere below, and the distant hum of crickets. David's breathing was shallow but steady. I reached for his hand. "We're going to make it," I whispered. "We have to." But deep down, I didn't believe it. At some point, I heard shouting in the distance, then a helicopter. Emily's voice echoed faintly through the canyon. "Please help us. My parents, they fell. We tried to save them." Her cries were full of practiced anguish. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her. David squeezed my hand weakly. "They're calling for rescue," he said. "We have to stay quiet. If they know we're alive, they'll finish the job." I nodded, tears running down my dirty cheeks. Searchlights from the helicopter swept across the canyon, flashing over the rocks, then over us. I froze, afraid to even blink. Moments later, voices shouted from above. "I see something," a man called. "There's movement down there." "Careful," another answered. "They might still be breathing." David's grip tightened. "Stay still," he whispered again. Ropes dropped. Rescue workers began to descend, their headlamps cutting through the darkness. I felt one of them kneel beside me, his gloved hands checking my pulse. Female, late 50s, weak pulse, shallow breathing. "She's alive?" another voice asked. "Barely. The man's in worse shape. We need a medevac now." David groaned softly. The rescuer leaned closer. "Sir, can you hear me?" David didn't answer. He was still pretending. I heard the medic radioing above. "We have 2 survivors. Critical condition. The fall was at least 100 feet. Then, from the cliff, I heard Emily again, her voice trembling in fake relief. "Oh my God, they're alive? Thank you. Please, save them." The hypocrisy made me want to scream. They placed oxygen masks on us, checking our vitals. My body felt weightless, floating in pain and disbelief. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I kept my eyes closed, forcing myself to stay limp. I could feel the sway of the rope as they pulled me upward toward the light. Emily's sobs grew louder. "Mom, Dad, please hang on." When they finally reached the top, I could sense her nearby. Her perfume lavender, the same scent she wore as a teenager, filled the air. She leaned close, her voice low enough for only me to hear. "You should have listened, Mom. Some things are better left buried." My heart clenched, but before I could react, one of the medics spoke. "Ma'am, please step back." They loaded us into the rescue helicopter. The noise was deafening, but I could still make out David's voice beside me. "We're not dead yet," he whispered through the oxygen mask. The flight to the hospital blurred into flashes of sound radio chatter, medical commands, the beeping of machines. When we landed, the rush of cold air hit me as they carried us out. I caught glimpses of white walls, fluorescent lights, doctors moving quickly. "Head trauma, possible fractures. Keep her under observation," someone said. I wanted to speak, to tell them everything, but my throat wouldn't work. All I could do was hold on to one thought: stay alive. Hours passed, or maybe days. I drifted in and out of consciousness. I heard Emily's voice more than once, soft and sweet, talking to the doctors, asking about our condition. To everyone else, she was the grieving daughter. To me, she was death wearing a familiar face. Then came the whisper that changed everything. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Emily thought I was unconscious when she leaned close to my hospital bed. "Rest, Mom," she said softly. "It's better this way. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." Her words slid into my mind like ice, and that was when I realized we had survived the fall, but the danger was far from over. Emily still had access to us. The hospital was her new hunting ground. I wanted to scream, to rip off the mask, to tell someone, but I couldn't move. All I could do was pray that David was awake, that he still had the recording, that someone, anyone, would believe us. Outside the room, I heard her talking to Mark. "They'll die anyway," she said, her tone flat. "Their injuries are too bad. We just have to wait." Mark hesitated. "And if they don't?" "Then we make sure they do." My blood ran cold. Somewhere down the hall, I heard footsteps approaching. A nurse's voice, calm and steady, said, "Visiting hours are over. You'll have to leave now." Emily sighed, her mask of sweetness slipping back into place. "Of course. We'll come back tomorrow." The door closed. For the first time since the fall, I let out a single, shaky breath. I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend, but one thing was certain. I wasn't safe yet, and neither was David. When I woke again, the world was white. White walls, white sheets, the steady beep of machines beside my bed. My body felt like it was made of glass, fragile and barely holding together. Every breath hurt. My left arm was wrapped in thick bandages. My ribs ached with each small movement. But I was alive. Somehow, against every odd, I was alive. I turned my head slowly. David was in the bed next to mine, pale and motionless, a tube running down his throat. His chest rose and fell in a slow rhythm. Relief washed over me. We had survived, but as the memories of the fall came back, the voices, the plan, Emily's whisper relief turned into dread. Voices drifted through the half-open door. Emily's voice was unmistakable, soft and trembling. "Doctor, please, tell me they're going to be okay." "They're both in critical condition," the doctor replied. "Your father's injuries are severe. Your mother is stable for now, but still unconscious." Emily let out a quiet sob. "I can't lose them, not after everything." Her performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her too. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps approach my bed. The smell of her perfume hit me before her voice did lavender, the same scent she wore to prom. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "If you can hear me, I just want you to know that I love you. I'm so sorry." She took my hand. Her touch was warm, gentle, but beneath the tenderness, I could feel the tremor of fear. She was wondering if I'd wake up, if I remembered. Then, in a tone so soft it barely existed, she leaned closer to my ear. "Some things are better left unsaid, Mom. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Her words slid into me like a knife. I wanted to open my eyes, to scream, to rip my hand away. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't obey. So I did the only thing I could. I stayed still, pretending to be asleep. The door opened again, and another voice spoke. "Miss Carter, visiting hours are over." Emily sniffed, forcing a small, trembling laugh. "Of course. I'll be back tomorrow." When she left, the silence in the room felt heavy, almost suffocating. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. That was when I heard a different voice, gentle but alert. "Mrs. Carter," it whispered. A young nurse leaned close. She had kind brown eyes and a badge that read, "Sarah Miller, RN." "I heard what she said," she continued quietly. "I don't think she meant it the way she wanted me to think she did. Are you awake?" I hesitated, then moved my finger just once. Sarah's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You can hear me." I moved my finger again, twice. She leaned even closer, her expression tense. "If you're in danger because of her, move your finger 3 times. It took all my strength, but I did it. 1, 2, 3. Her breath caught. "Okay," she said softly. "I'm going to help you, but you have to stay quiet. I'll talk to the doctor and make sure someone's watching this room." She straightened, masking her expression as the door opened again. Mark's voice came from the hallway. "Is she awake?" Sarah turned smoothly. "Not yet. Still under observation." "Good," he said. His tone was low, flat. "We'll come back later." Sarah nodded and waited until they were gone before she spoke again. "You're safe for now," she whispered. "I'll get help. Just hang on." That night was endless. The pain meds dulled my body but not my mind. Every time the hallway light shifted, I feared it was Emily returning to finish what she started. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds until morning. When the doctor came for rounds, I forced my eyes open fully for the first time. The brightness burned, but I managed to whisper, "My husband." He looked startled but smiled. "You're awake. Your husband is stable. We're keeping him under sedation until his vitals improve." "Where's the nurse?" I croaked. "Sarah." "She's on duty later today," he said. "She told us you might try to communicate soon. You're very lucky, Mrs. Carter." Lucky. That word didn't feel right. I wasn't lucky. I was trapped between life and a nightmare. By afternoon, Sarah returned. She closed the blinds, making sure no one could see in from the hall. "I told the head nurse there might be a safety issue," she said quietly. "There are officers stationed at the entrance now. They won't let anyone in without clearance." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice rasping. She squeezed my hand gently. "You don't have to thank me. But we need to tell the police what happened. Everything." I nodded, then looked toward David's bed. "He has proof," I said weakly. "His phone. It's recorded. Everything. Sarah's eyes widened again. Where is it? His jacket, I said. The one from the hike. She nodded quickly. I'll make sure the detectives know. Hours later, 2 officers arrived, one older, with gray hair and kind eyes, the other younger, serious. The older one introduced himself. Detective Daniel Moore. Mrs. Carter, we're here because Nurse Miller informed us of a possible threat. Do you feel safe right now? I closed my eyes for a moment. Not yet. They pulled chairs close to the bed. Can you tell us what happened? I spoke slowly, my voice breaking more than once. I told them everything. The will, the lies, the trip, the fall, the whisper in the hospital. I watched their faces shift from concern to disbelief to quiet horror. When I finished, Detective Moore leaned forward. You said your husband has a recording? Yes, in his jacket. He nodded to the younger officer. Get that jacket from evidence. Now. After they left, Sarah returned to check on me. You did the right thing, she said softly. You're safe now. But I wasn't sure. Emily had always been one step ahead. If she found out I was alive and talking, she would act again. Later that evening, as the sun set beyond the hospital windows, I heard movement outside the door. The handle turned slowly, then stopped. Sarah walked in moments later, frowning. Did someone just try to come in? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. They said they were family, but the officers stopped them. I think it was her. A chill ran down my spine. Don't worry, Sarah said firmly. She can't hurt you here. But as I lay back and closed my eyes, I wasn't convinced. Because Emily didn't need to break in. She already had everything, our names, our trust, our lives, and she knew exactly how to destroy what little was left. And I couldn't help but wonder, when she realizes we're still alive, what will she do next? The next morning, the hospital room felt different. The sun came through the blinds, washing the white walls with soft light, but it didn't bring peace. I could feel it in my bones. Something was about to happen. Detective Moore returned just after sunrise. His face looked serious, but there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. Mrs. Carter, he said, setting a folder on the table beside my bed. We got the jacket. The phone was inside. And it's still intact. My heart skipped a beat. Did you listen to it? He nodded. Yes, there's enough on that recording to charge them both. Your daughter and her husband talk about the plan, about pushing you, about making it look like an accident. You and your husband were right. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. For a moment, relief and grief collided inside me. Proof meant justice, but it also meant something far worse, that my own child had confessed to trying to kill me. David stirred in his bed, his eyes fluttering open for the first time in days. I reached for his hand. We're safe, I whispered. They know. He looked at me weakly, his lips trembling. Emily, they have the recording, I said softly. She can't hide anymore. Detective Moore nodded. We'll arrest them as soon as the warrant is signed. For now, we've placed officers outside this room and at every hospital exit. You're under protection. I wanted to believe him, but when you've been hunted by your own child, safety feels like a fragile illusion. By afternoon, the hospital buzzed with quiet tension. Nurses moved quickly, their voices low. Sarah stayed near, checking my vitals every hour, even when she didn't need to. I could tell she was as nervous as I was. Then, around 3 o'clock, I heard the unmistakable sound of Emily's voice in the hallway. I'm their daughter. I just need to see them for a minute. A firm male voice replied, I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't let anyone in without clearance. Her tone hardened. Do you have any idea who I am? They need me. My pulse raced. Sarah stepped between me and the door, whispering, Don't worry, she can't come in. Moments later, footsteps moved away. The tension in my chest didn't fade. It grew. Emily wasn't the type to walk away quietly. That night, Detective Moore came back with news. The judge has approved the arrest, he said. We're moving tonight. I wanted you to know before it happens. I nodded. Just promise me she won't be able to get near us again. He hesitated. We'll do everything we can. After he left, Sarah helped adjust my bed. It's almost over, she said gently. I wanted to believe that, but a voice deep inside whispered that Emily wouldn't let go so easily. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, it was dark. The hallway outside was quiet, except for the faint hum of machines. Then I heard something soft footsteps, too light to be a nurse. Too deliberate to be random. The doorknob turned slowly. "Sarah?" I whispered, but no one answered. The door opened just an inch, and through the gap, I saw a shadow, a woman's silhouette. Emily. She slipped inside like smoke, closing the door behind her. Her hair was tied back, her clothes dark, her eyes glinted in the dim light. "Hello, Mom," she said quietly. "You're tougher than I thought." My heart pounded. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," she said, taking a slow step forward, "to understand why you couldn't just let things go." "Fine, I did. You tried to kill us," I said, my voice trembling. "You killed your brother." Her face twisted, a flash of something between rage and pain. "Michael always got everything. You never saw me, Mom. Never." "That's not true." She smiled bitterly. "You're still lying to yourself." The air between us felt heavy. She moved closer, her voice softening. "It didn't have to be this way. If you'd just signed the papers, stayed quiet, none of this would have happened." The door burst open before she could take another step. "Police!" a voice shouted. Emily froze. Detective Moore and 2 officers rushed in, guns drawn. Mark was behind her, his face pale and terrified. "Emily Carter." "Mark Thompson," Moore said firmly. "You're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder." For a second, the room seemed to spin. Emily's eyes locked on mine, burning with something cold and wild. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "You think you're safe now?" An officer grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "You don't understand," she shouted. "I did it for us, for this family." Her voice cracked as they cuffed her hands. Mark didn't resist. He just stared at the floor, muttering, "I told her it was too much." As they led them away, I felt something inside me break and settle all at once. Sarah stood near the doorway, her eyes wet. "It's over," she whispered. But even as she said it, I knew it wasn't. The look Emily gave me as she left that mix of hatred and heartbreak told me she wasn't done. Hours later, the detectives returned with an update. "They've confessed most of it," Moore said. "The recording sealed the case. You can rest now." I nodded, though rest was the last thing I wanted. I looked at David, still sleeping under soft hospital light, and whispered, "We're alive. That has to count for something." But sleep never came. Around midnight, I was half awake when I noticed Sarah talking to a man outside the window. He handed her an envelope, nodded, and left. She came back inside, frowning. "What's that?" I asked. She opened it and pulled out a small photograph. Her hands trembled as she showed it to me. It was a picture of Emily taken that afternoon, smiling. On the back, in familiar handwriting, were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "You can't hide forever." Sarah looked at me, her face pale. "Who could have—" I didn't let her finish. I knew exactly who had sent it. Emily might have been in custody, but her reach wasn't gone. And for the first time since the fall, I wondered if surviving her was only the beginning of something much darker. I didn't sleep that night. The photograph sat on the table beside my hospital bed, its edges curling slightly from the warmth of the lamp. Emily's smile in that picture wasn't the one I knew from years ago. It was cold, empty, a mask. The words on the back burned into my mind. "You can't hide forever." Sarah tried to calm me. "Maybe it's some sick prank," she said softly. "People see things on the news and do cruel things." But I knew better. "That handwriting," I whispered. "It's hers." Detective Moore came early the next morning. His eyes were sharp, the kind of look that meant he hadn't slept either. "We traced the photo," he said, setting a folder down. "It was dropped off by someone wearing a hospital uniform. We're checking cameras, but whoever it was knew where to avoid them." I stared at the picture again. "So she still has someone on the outside." "Possibly," he said. "But she and Mark are in custody now, awaiting transfer to the county jail. They can't reach you directly." It should have made me feel safe. It didn't. By the afternoon, David was awake and stronger. He asked to see the photo. When I handed it to him, his jaw tightened. "She's still trying to control us," he said quietly, "even from behind bars." Sarah entered just then, holding a small envelope. "Mrs. Carter, this just arrived for you at the front desk. It didn't have a return address." I felt the room spin. Moore took the envelope before I could touch it. He tore it open carefully, pulling out a folded note. The words were scrawled in the same handwriting as before. "You can destroy my body, but you'll never destroy what I built." David's face went pale. What does that mean? Moore exhaled slowly. It means she's not done, but don't worry, we'll tighten security. I significators. The next few days passed in slow motion. Reporters began camping outside the hospital, whispering about the Carter case. Every time I saw a camera flash through the window, my stomach turned. People wanted a story, a mother nearly killed by her own daughter, but for me, this wasn't a headline. It was my life, my heartbreak, my shame. When I was finally discharged, the police escorted us to a safe house near Denver. It was small and plain, with pale beige walls and a faint smell of detergent. 2 officers stayed outside around the clock. I was supposed to feel protected, but the silence of that house was suffocating. David tried to make the best of it. He cooked simple meals, read the paper, pretended we were just on a quiet vacation. But I saw the way his hands shook when the phone rang, the way he avoided saying Emily's name. One evening, Detective Moore visited again. "We're preparing the trial," he said. "The DA's office wants both of you to testify. It'll help ensure maximum sentencing." David nodded. "We'll do whatever it takes." Moore hesitated. "You should know, Emily and Mark are already trying to make a deal. Their lawyers claim it wasn't premeditated, that it was an emotional breakdown, not murder." I felt anger rise in my throat. "They planned this for months. They signed papers, picked the location, bought equipment. That's not a breakdown, that's calculation." Moore nodded. "I agree, but juries are complicated. They'll need to hear your story, in your own words." After he left, I sat in the quiet living room, staring at the shadows creeping across the walls. The truth felt like a heavy stone inside me. To tell it meant reliving every moment, the fear, the fall, the betrayal, but staying silent would mean letting her win again. That night I dreamed of Michael. He stood at the edge of the cliff, sunlight on his face, smiling. "Mom," he said softly, "don't be afraid of the truth. It's all that's left now." I woke up in tears. The next morning, I told David I was ready. "We'll testify," I said. "She doesn't get to rewrite what she did." He nodded, his eyes tired but determined. "We'll face her together." The day of the pretrial hearing arrived faster than I expected. The courthouse was crowded, buzzing with reporters and onlookers. The moment I saw Emily sitting at the defense table, my breath caught. She looked nothing like the broken woman I hoped to see. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her suit pressed, her expression calm. Mark sat beside her, his hands clasped tightly, eyes on the floor. When she turned and saw me, a faint smile curved her lips, not remorseful, not frightened. It was the same smile from the photo. The prosecutor began outlining the charges: premeditated attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction. The words sounded cold, almost clinical, but I felt each one like a cut. When it was our turn to speak, I stood slowly, gripping the edge of the podium to keep my hands from trembling. My voice shook at first, but then steadied. "My daughter," I began, "was the light of my life. I spent years believing love could fix anything. I was wrong. Some wounds start inside the heart and grow in silence until they consume everything." The courtroom was still. Even Emily watched without blinking. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here because my son never got justice, and because I will not die a second time pretending my daughter didn't try to kill me." The judge thanked me and told me to step down. As I passed Emily's table, she leaned forward slightly and whispered, "You should have stayed dead." My knees nearly buckled, but I kept walking. Outside, the reporters swarmed us, their microphones flashing like weapons. "Mrs. Carter, what did she say to you? Do you think she feels remorse? Are you afraid of your daughter?" I didn't answer. How could I explain that the person who once called me Mom now saw me as an obstacle to destroy? That night, back at the safe house, I sat by the window watching the rain. David was asleep on the couch, finally resting. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. Then the phone rang. It wasn't the police, or Sarah, or Detective Moore. It was a voice I hadn't heard in decades, low, male, careful. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "my name is Robert Ellis. I used to be your family's attorney." I frowned. "Mr. Ellis? We haven't spoken in years." "Seance of that." "I know," he said, "but there's something you need to see. Something about Emily's finances. I think it's important." "What is it?" He hesitated. "I'd rather not say over the phone." Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I looked at the dark window, rain streaking down the glass. Where? Downtown Denver. My office at 10. And please, don't tell anyone yet. This could change everything. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, my heartbeat echoing in the silence. Change everything. I didn't know what Robert meant, but deep down, I could feel it. Whatever he had found wasn't just about money. It was about the past, about the pieces of the story that even now were still buried. And for the first time since the fall, I realized that maybe Emily wasn't the only one who had kept secrets all these years. The morning I met Robert Ellis was cold and gray, the kind of day when the world feels like it's holding its breath. David wanted to come with me, but his injuries were still too painful, so I promised to call the moment I arrived. 2 officers escorted me to the downtown Denver law office, a tall glass building that looked far too clean for a story so dirty. Robert met me in the lobby. He was older than I remembered, his hair almost white now, but his eyes were still sharp. "Mrs. Carter," he said, shaking my hand gently. "Thank you for coming." "Please," I replied quietly. "Just call me Helen." He led me into his office. Piles of papers covered his desk, along with a few old photos, one of my family from years ago, the day we signed our first will. I felt a pang of nostalgia and shame at the same time. Robert handed me a folder. "I didn't contact you until I was certain," he said. "But while reviewing your family's trust documents, I found something disturbing. Your daughter's been altering legal records for years. Signatures, account details, even property transfers." I opened the folder, my hands trembling. Copies of forms, check stubs, and emails stared back at me, all with forged versions of my name. "She's been taking out loans using your estate as collateral," Robert explained. "Hundreds of thousands of dollars. She planned to repay them after your passing, assuming no one would ever check." I felt sick. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 10 years, he said softly. "Long before Michael's death." The room seemed to tilt. "So even back then, she was already—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Robert nodded gravely. "I believe her financial trouble was the true motive behind everything that happened. It is another happiness President Cervais that was no very fans of the cores into the jams." He paused, hesitating before adding, "But there's more. She wasn't working alone." I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" He pulled another file from his drawer. "These signatures, the notarizations, some of them match documents I processed myself, but I never signed them. Someone inside the firm was helping her." For a moment I couldn't speak. Betrayal seemed to follow me everywhere. "Who?" I asked finally. Robert exhaled. "I'm not certain yet, but I've turned everything over to the detectives. They're expanding the case beyond the murder attempt." He leaned forward. "Helen, I need to tell you something else. I was there when your first will was written. Michael was supposed to be the primary heir, not Emily. After his death, Emily pressured your husband to rewrite it. I always wondered why. Now I know." Tears filled my eyes. "She killed him for money." Robert's voice softened. "People can lose themselves to greed. Even good families. It's the ugliest kind of corruption because it starts with love." Those words sank into me like truth I'd been avoiding for years. When I left the office, snow had begun to fall thin, silent flakes drifting through the gray sky. I called David, told him everything. His voice was quiet, broken. "We gave her everything," he said, "and she still wanted more." The following week, the trial began. The courtroom was colder than the mountain air had been. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters scribbling every word. Emily sat across from us, her wrists in cuffs, her face expressionless. The prosecutor laid out the evidence, the recording from David's phone, the forged documents, the witness testimonies. It was overwhelming. For once, Emily didn't look confident. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, my legs still weak but steady enough. I looked at my daughter, the child I had once rocked to sleep, the girl who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard. "Emily," I said softly, "I don't know when I lost you. Maybe it was long before Michael died. Maybe I never really knew you at all, but I want you to understand something. You didn't just kill your brother. You destroyed the family that loved you more than anything." Her eyes glistened for a second, then turned cold again. "You always blamed me," she said quietly. "You just needed someone to hate." "No," I replied. "I needed someone to love. You just didn't want it." The judge's gavel struck. The verdict came after only 2 hours guilty on all counts. Emily and Mark were sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of early release. When the sentence was read, David squeezed my hand. "It's over," he whispered, but I wasn't sure it ever truly would be. Months passed. David and I moved to a small house by the ocean in California. The air smelled of salt and pine, the sound of waves soft against the sand. We took custody of Emily's 2 children, our grandchildren who were too young to understand what had happened. Every night, I told them stories about their Uncle Michael, the architect who wanted to build homes where families could be happy and safe. I never mentioned the cliff, the fall, the betrayal. One day maybe I will, but not now. Sometimes, when the kids laugh in the yard or chase seagulls along the beach, I almost forget the pain. Almost. David's knee never healed fully. He walks with a cane, but his smile is easier now. We talk about traveling again someday, maybe driving along the coast. For now, peace is enough. Still, I keep that old photograph, the one Emily sent with the words, "You can't hide forever." I don't keep it as a threat, but as a reminder. You can't truly hide from the truth. Not forever. The truth will always find its way out, no matter how deep it's buried. This story isn't about revenge. It's about survival. It's about the way love can blind us and the strength it takes to open our eyes again. It's about the danger of silence, the way families hide behind polite smiles while secrets rot underneath. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's choosing to live, even after your heart's been broken. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt like your family's love turned into something sharp and dangerous, know this. You are not alone. Sometimes, surviving is its own form of justice. If this story touched you, if it made you think about love, trust, or the things we never say until it's too late, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this, stories about truth, about family, about survival, deserve to be heard. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remind someone out there to pay attention before it's too late.